Hello, today I want to share a story about the betrayal of friends. Just when life starts getting better, they turn their backs on you. I would never believe in the myth of friendship between girls and that it doesn't exist. However, my acquaintance showed the opposite with her actions, making it difficult for me to trust anyone now. We started communicating in preschool, although people around us didn't understand why. We were complete opposites. Val, that's what she's called, was raised by her grandmother, who enjoyed alcohol, while my family was stable. Our preferences in clothing and music were completely different, yet our communication was based on mutual interest. Val's grandmother had no financial problems, but they couldn't afford excessive luxury, so she occasionally visited me. My parents didn't mind, and I often lent her things or jewelry, thinking it was a sign of true friendship. After school, Val decided not to go to college and find a job, even though many thought she could easily get into a public university. On the contrary, I continued my studies, but our communication didn't stop. We often hung out together, and most of the time I paid for our entertainment. I received money from my parents and worked part time, living with them. Val paid her utilities, bought food, and things for herself. 2 years later, I formed a new group of friends, but attempts to befriend Val were unsuccessful. One acquaintance was surprised by my friendship with Val. Thinking she envied me, I dismissed it as a joke. A few years later, after finishing my education, I got married. Val commented on my fiance's appearance, saying he looked silly. Initially offended, I let it slide, thinking it was just a joke. The question of who would be my witness at the wedding was never discussed. It was clear she would be my best friend. We began preparing for the celebration, and I even ordered a dress for Val in my own expense. I was sure she would be happy for me, so when my husband's mother suggested not inviting her to the wedding, I was surprised but didn't object. After the wedding, we didn't meet Val for a long time due to vacations, renovations, and moving. Later, we took out a mortgage with help from both our parents and my husband's mother. When the renovation was complete, Val visited often, and during her visits, I shared my concerns about my husband's behavior. She reassured me, saying it was just us getting used to each other, and my husband was not giving me any reason for jealousy. Although my husband gave me no reason for jealousy, I began searching for things to pick on. One day, I found contraceptive packaging and traces of someone else's foundation. Confronting my husband, he denied everything and promised loyalty. We agreed not to keep secrets from each other. My husband revealed his reluctance to see Val in our home and eventually explained why. Val had been bothering him since our wedding day, even causing him to stay longer at work to avoid her. When I asked why he didn't tell me earlier, he thought I wouldn't believe him. The next day, I met Val to discuss it openly, hoping for either denial or a reasonable explanation. However, Val didn't deny it and admitted doing it intentionally because she envied me. After her monologue, she quickly gathered her things and left. I sat there, still trying not to believe it. When I felt a bit better, I called my husband to pick me up. So, due to envy, our relationship with Val fell apart, and our friendship, if it ever existed, crumbled. This story is about How a mom believes her daughter is smart and will achieve everything on her own. So she directs all her attention to her brother. What a curse of intelligence! My success turned out to be my enemy. Thanks, Mom. It's a pity I didn't find out a little earlier that it's more profitable to be a dumb failure. In our family life, my dad was practically non existent for me. My brother had it relatively easier. His dad was around for a whopping 3 years. Times were tough, as always, in history. The state was dealing with numerous problems, and there was no help for us. Mom had to work from morning till night, and my brother and I were constantly home alone. Grandma, Mom's mother, insisted that we move in with her and our two-roomer be sold. Grandma's arguments were convincing. The kids would be looked after, and the money from selling the apartment would be a good support for our almost non-existent budget. Mom didn't want to sell the apartment she inherited from Grandma. Hiding behind an armchair, I overheard Mom and Grandma's conversation. I really didn't want to move in with Grandma. Of course, I loved Grandma and Grandpa, but I didn't like being at their place because of the horrible smells of medicines and cats. Grandma couldn't persuade Mom. As long as Grandma and Grandpa were alive, they helped us with money. When they were gone, Mom started renting out their 3-room apartment. It was very profitable for us. Now our financial situation had significantly improved, and Mom didn't have to work multiple jobs. She had the opportunity to spend more time with us, my brother and me, but still, time for upbringing was missed. During the time we were left to our own devices, my brother and I used it differently. I was fully immersed in my studies. I learned to read early and almost independently, read a lot, and with interest. My brother preferred hanging out with friends, staying out late in the yard, or who knows where. No wonder he had big problems at school with both performance and behavior. Mom was frequently called to school for parent teacher meetings. Soon, the Juvenile Affairs Office even put my brother on the register. Meanwhile, I dedicated all my time to studying books and acquiring new knowledge. It was not only interesting, but also beneficial for my future. When my brother was 17, he got involved in some criminal story, and Mom had to spend a huge amount of money to get him out. Then he was drafted into the army. Mom really hoped that the army would straighten him out, that he would mature and become smarter. When my brother was demobilized, I was a freshman at university. My brother found a job. That's how we lived, my mom and I in one room, my brother in another room, my brother in another. My brother didn't last long at that job. He either didn't like it or they didn't like him, but he changed jobs one after another. His longest job was 6 months as a furniture assembler in his store. But these problems didn't bother him much. He stayed at home for months. Well, not exactly at home. He still hung out at discos, with friends and who knows where. Soon he showed up at home, not alone, but with a girl he introduced to us as his future wife. Her name was Tanya, and her belly clearly showed us, Mom and me, that we were about to become a grandmother and aunt. It was too late to cry stop. A relative plus was that my brother started spending more time at home. Tanya, despite her silliness, had a good character, and it was easy to communicate with her. A child was born, and soon it turned out that Tanya was pregnant again. I felt like I needed to run away from here. Neither my mental nor physical health could endure it. I could have moved into one of the rooms in Grandma's apartment that Mom rented out. But every penny counted. I understood that. I moved in with my university classmates. I aced my state exams, defended my thesis. My efforts paid off. I was offered an internship abroad. I left the country for 6 months. During this time, I kept in touch with Mom over the phone. I knew that after my brother and Tanya had their first son, a daughter was born, and there were changes in living arrangements. The whole family moved into Grandma's 3-room apartment, and the 2-roomer was put up for rent, and the 2-roomer was put up for rent. My brother works as a furniture store assembler. Tanya got a job as a salesperson. Mom retired, doesn't work, and looks after her grandchildren. After 6 months, I returned home. After living a few days in the passage room, I realized I couldn't endure it for long. I had to rent an apartment and move out. I managed to find a good job, thanks to an excellent diploma and recommendations from my internship. Due to my new job, I had to travel frequently on business trips, so I rarely communicated with Mom and my brother. And in the last meeting, I learned the news. They sold the 2-roomer. It turns out my brother had a back injury at work, and now physical labor was beyond his strength. Let's not even talk about mental labor. And Tanya is pregnant again. So, selling the story of how my brother's girlfriend tried to turn him against me and ended up breaking up with him herself. The former girlfriend of my brother is going around telling everyone that I ruined their wedding. However, she herself did everything to make it happen, and of course, not because of great intelligence. My brother and I are twins. Our family could be called exemplary because we were very close and friendly. Our parents loved each other very much, and we grew up as happy children. When we were 20, we lost our parents. They died in a car accident when they were returning from a friend's country house in winter. It was a tough time, but my brother and I were lucky to have each other. Facing the grief together made it easier. And they say there's a special bond between twins. Our family lived in a 2-bedroom apartment. The apartment was quite spacious, with a large kitchen. Our parents bought this apartment shortly before their death. They planned that when my brother and I moved out, they would turn our room into their bedroom and have a living room in theirs. Unfortunately, their plans were not meant to be. When the tragedy happened, my brother and I decided that each of us would have our own room to avoid stepping on the toes of many families and to prevent conflicts, to avoid stumbling into the pitfalls that many families face, and to avoid conflicts. My brother and I decided to discuss the future of the family apartment. We mutually agreed that each of us would save money for a separate apartment, and when both of us had families, we would decide whether to share the apartment or if someone would buy out their share. Since we were left without parents, we had to switch to distance learning and start working to support ourselves. Though my brother and I are kindred spirits, our circles are different. When we turned 22, my brother fell head over heels in love, so much so that he brought his girlfriend to live with us. Her name was Julia. I barely knew her. Just saw her a couple of times at joint parties, and she seemed like a simple, very beautiful and sweet girl. I didn't mind her living with us. Mom taught us from childhood to help her around the house, and there was no need to remind us several times to wash the dishes or tidy up. It was a daily routine for us. There was also rule 1. Cooks, the other washes the dishes. When we were left alone, my brother and I cleaned and cooked whenever we could. We never had conflicts on that basis. And when Julia started living with us, she no longer seemed so simple and sweet to me. I thought that if you live with your boyfriend in his apartment, you will simply wash your own dishes. But no, the girl thought that she was just a guest and decided that cleaning and cooking were my direct responsibilities. Cook and cleaner in one person. During dinner, I decided to bring up this issue that since we live together as three, we should also share household duties among three. My brother supported me. I thought Julia heard us. She might have heard, but she didn't understand. That's for sure. My brother works a regular Monday to Friday schedule, while I have a flexible schedule with 2 days on and 2 days off. It's worth noting that Julia, our roommate, doesn't work, but that didn't stop her from raiding our fridge. Julia didn't want to cook for the three of us, and she didn't even attempt to feed my brother. Apparently, the way to my brother's heart wasn't through his stomach. So, on one of my weekends, I decided to cook for us for a couple of days. After preparing the meal, I piled the dishes in the sink and thought of taking a break. I decided to invite Julia to lunch and, at the same time, ask her to wash the dishes. Knocking on her room's door, I entered, distracting her from scrolling through Instagram. I cooked lunch. If you want, have a meal and please wash the dishes. I'm tired. Um, I a dishwasher here. I'm like a guest. Why should I wash your dishes? Replied the Instagram diva. I think you're not a guest if you're living with my brother in our apartment. And we told you that we have a rule in our house. One cooks, the other cleans. If you decided to surprise us and cook something, I would happily wash the dishes for you. Should I also mop the floors and clean the toilet? That would be a bad idea. I'm tired of picking up your hair from the floor. You could have cleaned it in three. Uh, in three? When my brother came home from work, I told him about the small conflict with Julia. We all had dinner together, and I went to my room, noticing that the dishes remained untouched in the sink. Later, when I went to the kitchen to have tea, I saw that the dishes were washed. I don't know if my brother did it himself or influenced Julia. A couple of days later, coming home from work, I heard Julia crying. When I asked what happened, my brother said that Julia lost a family heirloom, a brooch with a sapphire. Personally, I thought it wasn't surprising considering the mess she created in my brother's room. She probably threw her brooch somewhere and forgot about it. I pretended to sincerely sympathize and went to my room. Half an hour later, Julia came to me and asked for permission to use makeup remover. As she reached for it, she dropped my small box that my mom and I bought together at the seaside. To my surprise, not only did I see scattered jewelry on the floor, but also Julia's brooch. Julia immediately called my brother and started shouting, "Do you see? Look at who we're living with. She hates me." In tears, Julia rushed out of the room. My brother followed to calm her down, and I stood there in bewilderment. I thought such nonsense only happened in Russian melodramas, not in my apartment. I went to them and started speaking. I don't know what's going on in this girl's head, but I'm fed up with this kindergarten. I think you're too demanding of Julia. She doesn't feel like the mistress here, my brother declared. Open your eyes. What am I demanding from her? Just basic help around the house. She sits on Instagram all day, does nothing, and then stages cheap soap operas here. She throws her brooches into boxes and claims she's just a guest. Serve her all you want. She won't do anything unless asked. What kind of mistress is she? You see how she insults me. She flat out says, I'm nobody. Answer her. Julia turned to my brother. He remained silent. Julia stormed into her room, packed her things, and left. I don't know if my brother tried to bring her back. I was disgusted to participate in such cheap intrigues or listen to anything about this girl. I simply closed myself in my room. After some time, my brother said he was disappointed in her, and they broke up. I hope it was a valuable experience for my brother, and he'll become better at understanding women without being swayed only by a pretty face and figure. As for Julia, she goes around telling our friends that I'm an unbearable witch who ruined her happiness and that my brother is a spineless jerk.